She woke up on a random date wearing nothing but a ring, a beautiful, heartwarming, and passionate love story for my beautiful family. If you don't like the introduction, you can skip it, but please don't leave the story. Watch until the end. Today's story will be a blockbuster. Hi, my very beautiful, loyal, and precious family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. My beautiful family, I love you. You are doing too much for your brother, Mr. Peter, and I promise you, I will never forget you. You are my heart, my strength, and my reason to keep going. A beautiful prayer for my family. Heavenly Father, with every breath in my body, I lift up my beautiful, loyal, and precious family to you. Lord, they are the reason I stand strong today. They are the love that keeps me moving forward. Bless them beyond measure. Let their hearts overflow with peace, their lives shine with joy, and their dreams rise higher than the skies. Father, wipe away their secret tears, answer the prayers they whisper in the silence, and fill every empty space in their hearts with your unshakable love. No weapon formed against them shall prosper. No storm will shake their faith. No darkness will steal their light. Lord, keep them safe, healthy, and filled with your endless grace. I love them deeply, but you love them even more. Hold them close, guide their steps, and bless them in ways they never imagined. Amen. My beautiful family, how was the last story? Did you feel the passion, the love, the fire? I need to hear from you. Like this video, comment, and share. YouTube took too much from us, but they can't take away our love. We are rising again, but I can't do this alone. Every single one of you matters. Each like, each comment, each share, it brings our family back together. And don't forget, 20,000 subscribers, only 3 days left. We can do this with love, with unity, with passion. My beautiful family, I will never forget you. You are my heart, you are my strength, and together we will rise again. Juniper Lark's heels clicked against the cobblestone street of Azure Bay, the sound echoing between pastel-colored storefronts. Despite the warm June sunshine, people stepped into doorways or crossed to the opposite sidewalk as she approached. A mother yanked her curious child closer, whispering urgent warnings as Juniper passed. It hadn't always been this way. Once she'd been Azure Bay's golden girl, brilliant art student engaged to the town's beloved doctor in training, their future mapped out in sunshine and promise. That was before the accident, before Michael's car plunged off Devil's Curve as he rushed to their wedding, his body broken on the rocks below, while she waited at the altar in white lace and pearl. 5 years had passed, yet the whispers followed her like shadows. There goes the Black Widow. Never even made it to I do before she killed him. My cousin's friend touched her shoulder at the market and broke her arm the next day. Juniper pushed open the door to her small pottery studio overlooking the turbulent Pacific. Here, at least, she found respite. Clay didn't judge. Clay didn't fear. Clay transformed beneath her skilled fingers from formless mass to objects of beauty. The only magic she possessed, despite what the townspeople believed. "You're cursed, Juniper Lark," the town priest had whispered at Michael's funeral, his eyes flat with accusation. "God has marked you." She hadn't bothered arguing. What defense could she offer when her wedding day had ended with her fiancé's casket lowered into spring soil? The bell above her studio door jingled, startling her. Few people dared enter her domain. "I brought lunch." Amara, her only remaining friend, placed a paper bag on the work table, carefully avoiding the wet clay. "And before you say you're not hungry, I don't care. You're eating." Juniper wiped her hands on her apron, leaving ghostly fingerprints. "I had toast this morning." "Toast isn't lunch." Amara unpacked containers of fragrant curry. "Also, I've got news." Juniper tensed. In Azure Bay, news rarely benefited her. "I got you a date." "Absolutely not." Juniper turned back to her wheel. "With Luke Ryder." The name hung in the air like smoke. Even isolated as she was, Juniper recognized it. Luke Ryder, architectural wunderkind whose modern designs were transforming the coastline, whose face graced business magazines and whose name appeared on the charity gala invitation lists. Has your brain short-circuited? Men like him don't date women like me. Amara crossed her arms. Women like you? You mean intelligent, talented, beautiful women who've survived unbearable loss? Women the entire town believes are cursed. Juniper's hands slammed clay onto the wheel. Women whose touch supposedly brings death. Luke Ryder doesn't live in Azure Bay. He doesn't believe in curses. Juniper gave a bitter laugh. Then he's uniquely naive. He's also being crucified in the press, Amara said quietly. His ex-wife is destroying him publicly, saying he's less than a man because he supposedly can't father children, that he hid it from her until after marriage. Juniper's hands stilled on the clay. That's cruel. People are cruel. Amara's eyes softened. He needs someone who understands what it's like to be defined by others' lies. You need someone who won't cross the street when you approach. Tomorrow night, Meridian Restaurant, 7 o'clock. I won't go. Then I'll drag you there myself. Amara headed toward the door. Wear the midnight blue dress, you know which one. Across town, in a glass-walled office overlooking the bay, Luke Ryder stared at architectural renderings without seeing them. The morning's headlines still burned in his mind. Ryder's sterility scandal. Ex-wife reveals he can't give a woman what she needs. His jaw clenched tight enough to ache. Christina had taken their private medical consultations, inconclusive at best, and twisted them into public entertainment. 3 years of marriage had taught him her capacity for cruelty, but this exceeded even his expectations. You need to respond, Luke. James Chen, his business partner, paced the office. Investors are getting skittish. Perception matters. I'm not discussing my reproductive capabilities in the press. Luke's voice carried the edge of controlled rage that had become his signature since the divorce began. My personal life has nothing to do with this firm's success. It shouldn't, but it does. James tossed the newspaper onto Luke's immaculate desk. Christina's father sits on the Heritage Foundation board. They're reconsidering funding for the harbor project. Luke's fingers tightened around his pen. The harbor revitalization meant everything. Jobs for the community, sustainable design that preserved the coastline's natural beauty while making it accessible. His legacy beyond steel and glass. What do you suggest? A public statement about my sperm count? James sighed. A reminder that you're more than these accusations. The charity gala's tomorrow night. Show up with someone. Look normal, unbothered. I am bothered, James. I'm being professionally sabotaged by my ex-wife's lies. Then fight back, but not with lawyers and angry denials. James's expression softened slightly. I've arranged a dinner before the gala. Woman named Juniper Lark, artist from Azure Bay. I'm not interested in your matchmaking. She's not a match. She's a dinner companion who understands what it's like to have rumors destroy your life. James headed for the door. Meridian, 7 o'clock. Wear something that doesn't scream corporate robot. After James left, Luke swiveled his chair toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. Azure Bay stretched below, postcard perfect with its curving shoreline and red-roofed buildings. Somewhere down there was a woman who supposedly understood his situation. He doubted it. No one could understand what it felt like to have your most private pain served up for public consumption, to be labeled less than a man by someone who had once promised to love you. His phone buzzed with another message from Christina. Hope you enjoyed the Morning Chronicle, darling. Just wait until they learn what else you're hiding. Luke closed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. He'd loved her once, believed her declaration that children didn't matter, that their life together was enough. The truth emerged later. Her resentment growing with each negative pregnancy test. Her accusations that he'd trapped her in a childless marriage. Her affairs with men she deemed more virile. The divorce should have ended it. Instead, Christina seemed determined to destroy everything he'd built, his reputation, his business, his future. The latest medical report sat locked in his desk drawer, unshared even with James. Contradicting earlier findings, it suggested the infertility issues might be treatable. Not that it mattered now. What woman would want him after Christina's public evisceration? Tomorrow night, Meridian Restaurant. A blind date with a woman named Juniper Lark, who apparently carried her own burden of rumors. Luke reached for his calendar, intending to cancel, then hesitated. What did he have to lose? His reputation was already in tatters. One dinner wouldn't kill him. He couldn't possibly know how that single decision would alter the course of his life forever. Chapter 2. Electric First Sight. The Meridian perched on the edge of Azure Bay's highest cliff, its glass walls offering panoramic ocean views. Luke arrived 15 minutes early, a lifetime habit of punctuality that even tonight's reluctance couldn't break. The maitre d' led him to a secluded table where candlelight danced against crystal and white linen. "Something to drink while you wait, Mr. Ryder?" the server asked, hovering with practiced deference. "Scotch." "Neat." Luke tugged at his midnight blue tie. James's insistence that he look approachable had led to this suit instead of his usual charcoal gray. He felt exposed, off balance. The drink arrived, amber liquid catching the light. Luke took a fortifying sip, eyes drifting toward the entrance. This was a mistake. What could he possibly have in common with some small-town artist? He should leave now before the restaurant's glass doors swung open and everything changed. She entered alone, midnight blue fabric flowing around her slender frame. Luke's breath caught, not because of conventional beauty, though she possessed that in abundance, but because of something in her eyes. They were ancient, those eyes, knowing, as if they'd witnessed centuries of human suffering and emerged carrying both wisdom and wounds. Luke found himself standing, a gesture of respect. His grandfather had drilled into him that now felt instinctive rather than obligatory. The maitre d' guided her toward his table, and he noticed how other diners watched her pass, some with curiosity, others with something darker. She moved through their attention like someone accustomed to being observed, but never truly seen. "You must be Luke." Her voice carried notes of caution and courtesy in equal measure. Up close, her beauty was more arresting. Rich brown skin glowing in the candlelight, full lips quirked in a guarded half-smile, those remarkable eyes assessing him without flinching. "Juniper." He extended his hand, an automatic business gesture that transformed the moment their fingers touched. Electricity sparked between them, not metaphorical but almost tangible, as if some dormant circuit had suddenly closed. Luke saw her eyes widen slightly, confirming she'd felt it too. "Do you believe in curses, Mr. Ryder?" she asked as she took her seat, skipping past social pleasantries with refreshing directness. The question should have felt absurd. He built his career on concrete realities, measurable dimensions, physics rather than superstition. Yet something about her made him consider his answer carefully. "I believe in human cruelty, disguised as superstition," he replied finally. "And please call me Luke." A genuine smile touched her lips for the first time. "Well answered, Luke." The server appeared, reciting specials neither truly heard. They ordered without much thought, food secondary to the conversation unfolding between them. "Your friend mentioned you're an artist," Luke said once they were alone again. "What medium?" "Play, primarily. There's something about transforming, Earth with your hands that feels, she paused, searching for words, redemptive. You seek redemption through art? She took a sip of wine, examining him over the crystal rim. Don't we all seek redemption through something? Your buildings transform spaces, create order from chaos. Is that so different? Luke leaned forward, forgetting his earlier reluctance. Most people see architecture as mathematical, practical. Most people lack imagination. Her fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. I've seen your harbor design. It speaks of healing, the way the structures embrace the shoreline rather than dominate it. He felt strangely exposed, as if she'd glimpsed something in his work he'd intentionally buried. You follow architecture? I follow beauty in whatever form it takes. Her eyes met his directly. Your ex-wife's interviews seem determined to erase the beauty you've created. The blunt acknowledgement of his public humiliations startled him. Most people pretended not to recognize him or avoided the subject entirely, just as your town seems determined to forget you're a human being rather than a convenient scapegoat, he countered. Silence fell between them. Not uncomfortable, but charged with recognition. They dispensed with pretense in record time, reaching a level of honesty Luke rarely experienced, even with longtime associates. They say I killed my fiancée, Juniper said quietly. That my touch brings misfortune, that I'm marked by darkness. They say I'm not a real man. Luke's voice remained steady, though the words tasted bitter. That I deceived my wife, that I'm incomplete. Are you? She asked, not unkindly. Incomplete? Any of us complete. She smiled sadly. I think that's humanity's great illusion, that somewhere perfection exists, that wholeness is possible, without cracks and missing pieces. Their food arrived, artfully arranged and largely ignored as conversation deepened. Luke found himself revealing things he'd told no one, not his partner, not his therapist, not even his journal. The liberating power of speaking to someone who carried her own burden of public judgment freed something long frozen within him. The night before our wedding, Juniper said, candlelight catching the unshed tears in her eyes, I called Michael, asking him to pick up my grandmother's handkerchief from her house. It was meant to be my something borrowed. The road was wet from rain. They say he took Devil's Curve too fast. That doesn't make you responsible for his death. Logic rarely defeats guilt, Luke. You know that. She glanced toward the windows where darkness had fallen, transforming them into mirrors reflecting their solitary table. Your ex-wife's accusations, they've affected your business? The foundation funding our harbor project is reconsidering their commitment. 3 clients have delayed signing contracts. My board is getting nervous. He rotated his scotch glass slowly. All because Diana decided my private medical information made good tabloid fodder. Is it true, what she's saying? The question would have enraged him from anyone else. From Juniper, it felt like an offered confidence rather than an invasion. The doctors were never conclusive, he admitted, and recent tests suggest earlier findings may have been incorrect. Not that it matters now. Truth always matters, she said simply. Their desserts remained untouched as the restaurant gradually emptied around them. Neither seemed to notice the passing hours or the curious glances from the staff. A violent crack of thunder finally interrupted their conversation as a summer storm rolled in from the Pacific. I should get you home, Luke said, reluctantly signaling for the check. Yes, I suppose we should. Juniper's words cut off as lightning illuminated the darkness outside, followed immediately by torrential rain hammering against the glass. The maitre d' approached apologetically. Mr. Ryder, the storm has flooded the lower access road. The highway remains open if you'd like to depart, but visibility is quite poor. Luke looked to Juniper, suddenly unwilling to end their evening. We could wait it out, he suggested. Unless you need to get back. Her smile held a new warmth. No one's waiting for me. They moved to the restaurant's covered terrace, where they could watch the storm's fury lashing the coastline below. The air smelled of ozone and salt, primal elements unleashed. Most patrons had braved the weather, leaving them virtually alone, except for staff clearing distant tables. I've always loved storms, Juniper said, standing close to the glass barrier. They remind me that nature doesn't care about human judgment or human pain. They simply are, powerful, beautiful, devastating. Luke moved beside her, close enough to feel the electricity between them once more. Like certain conversations, her eyes met his, no longer guarded but luminous, with something he couldn't name. Without conscious thought, he reached for her hand. When she didn't pull away, he drew her gently into his arms. "Dance with me," he murmured, though no music played beyond the rhythm of rain and distant thunder. Here, now. When better. She moved with him in perfect synchrony, their bodies finding a natural harmony that belied their recent acquaintance. As they turned slowly on the empty terrace, Luke felt something long dormant awakening within. Desire, yes, but something deeper. Recognition. When his lips finally met hers, the connection transcended physical attraction. The kiss felt like coming home to a place he'd never known existed yet had always been seeking. Juniper's arms tightened around his neck, her body yielding against his as the storm raged around their sanctuary of glass and stone. Neither spoke when they finally parted, both understanding that words would diminish what had just passed between them. Instead, Luke offered his hand once more, a question rather than a demand. Juniper's answer came as she laced her fingers through his, following him into the rain-washed night and whatever destiny awaited them beyond. Chapter 3. One night changes everything. Rain lashed against the windows of Luke's penthouse, creating silvery rivers down the vast glass walls. The city lights of Azure Bay sparkled below through breaks in the storm clouds, a constellation of earthbound stars. Neither Luke nor Juniper bothered turning on the lights, preferring the dramatic illumination of occasional lightning that painted the minimalist space in stark relief. "This isn't me," Juniper said softly, standing in the center of his living room. Water dripped from her dress, creating a dark pool at her feet. "I don't go home with men I've just met." Luke crossed to a cabinet, retrieving 2 crystal glasses and a decanter. "This isn't me either," he admitted, pouring amber liquid into each glass. "I don't kiss strangers on restaurant terraces." "Then what are we doing?" She accepted the drink, her fingers brushing his with that same electric connection that had startled them both earlier. Being honest, perhaps. He gestured toward a plush sofa facing the panoramic windows. "With ourselves, if nothing else." Juniper sank gracefully onto the cushions, suddenly aware of how her wet dress clung to her curves. "I should change. I'll find you something." Luke disappeared down a hallway, returning moments later with a soft gray shirt. "The bathroom's through there. Take your time." When she emerged, his shirt hanging to her thighs, Luke had built a fire in the sleek gas fireplace. The flames cast dancing shadows across the polished concrete floors. He'd changed as well, trading his formal suit for comfortable lounge pants and a fitted t-shirt that revealed the lean, muscled physique his business attire had only hinted at. "Better?" he asked, voice dropping slightly as his eyes traveled over her bare legs. "Much." She curled into the corner of the sofa, tucking her feet beneath her. "Though I feel overdressed compared to most women who probably find themselves in your penthouse at midnight." Luke's laugh held genuine amusement. "You'd be surprised how few women find themselves here at all, midnight or otherwise. The notorious Playboy architect lives like a monk? I find that hard to believe." "Believe what you like," He settled beside her close enough to feel her warmth without touching. But relationships haven't been my priority since the divorce. Work is simpler, more controllable. Until it isn't, Juniper sipped her drink, savoring the smoky burn. Until someone uses your private life to threaten your professional achievements. Lightning flashed, illuminating the raw emotion that crossed his face. Yes, I understand that invasion. She gazed into the flames. After Michael died, reporters dug into every aspect of our relationship. They interviewed his friends, my friends. Someone leaked our text messages from that night. The town treated his death like entertainment and me like a character in their tragic play. Is that why you stay? Luke asked. In a place that treats you with such cruelty? The question struck deeper than she expected. Azure Bay was home before it became prison. My family roots go back generations. My cottage belonged to my grandmother. Her fingers tightened around the crystal glass. Leaving felt like letting them win. And your art, does it flourish in that environment? My pottery is the one thing they couldn't taint. Juniper's expression softened. Clay doesn't judge. When my hands shape it, I'm creating something from nothing, transforming pain into beauty. I'd like to see your work sometime, Luke said, his voice sincere rather than merely polite. Most of it was destroyed last week. She tried to keep her tone matter-of-fact, but pain slipped through. Someone broke into my studio, smashed nearly everything. Luke's body tensed beside her. The police know exactly who did it. 3 local boys, sons of respectable families who claim they were just playing a prank. Bitterness edged her words. One officer suggested I should be more careful about provoking people with my continued presence in town. That's unacceptable. Anger colored his voice. Criminal. That's Azure Bay. Juniper finished her drink, welcoming the spreading warmth. But enough about the darkness. Tell me something no one knows about the great Luke Ryder. His expression shifted, vulnerability replacing anger. I design nurseries, he admitted quietly. Children's rooms I'll likely never fill. The confession hung between them, intimate and raw. Despite what Diana claims, Dusty hope persists against reason sometimes. He set his glass down, turning to face her fully. The doctors were never definitive. Recent tests suggest the issue might be treatable. Not that it matters now. What woman would want me after Diana's public campaign? Juniper reached out, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. A woman who recognizes truth when she hears it. The touch sparked something primal between them. Luke caught her hand, pressing a kiss against her palm that sent shivers coursing through her body. When his eyes met hers, they contained a question she answered by leaning forward, her lips finding his with newfound certainty. Unlike their first kiss on the terrace, this one held no hesitation. Luke's arms encircled her waist, drawing her onto his lap as the kiss deepened. Juniper's fingers threaded through his hair, her body arching against his with instinctive desire. 5 years of self-imposed isolation melted away beneath his touch, her senses awakening with almost painful intensity. We should stop, he murmured against her throat, even as his hands slipped beneath the borrowed shirt to find bare skin. Why? She challenged, pulling back to meet his gaze. Because we barely know each other. Because the world has labeled us both defective. His thumbs traced circles on her hip bones, sending liquid heat through her veins. Because I don't want you to regret anything. Juniper's laugh held both affection and certainty. Luke Ryder, I've spent 5 years drowning in regret. Tonight, I choose to breathe. Her words broke the final barrier between them. Luke stood, in one fluid motion, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. Juniper wrapped her legs around his waist, continuing their kiss as he carried her down the hallway to his bedroom, where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the storm still raging over the Pacific. "Last chance to reconsider," he whispered as he laid her gently on the silk-covered bed. Juniper answered by pulling the shirt over her head, revealing herself completely to his gaze. Lightning illuminated the room, casting her brown skin in silver light. "No more hiding," she said softly. "Not tonight." What followed transcended physical pleasure. Each touch carried healing, each kiss erased judgment. Luke worshipped her body with a reverence that brought tears to her eyes, his hands and lips discovering secrets she'd forgotten she possessed. Juniper matched his passion with her own, finding freedom in abandoning the caution that had defined her existence since Michael's death. "No one has ever looked at me the way you do," she confessed against his skin as they moved together. "No one has ever seen me," he answered, his voice raw with emotion and desire. Their bodies found perfect rhythm, building toward completion with an intensity that startled them both. When release finally came, it carried the force of redemption, washing away years of isolation and judgment in waves of shared pleasure. Afterward, they lay entwined as the storm gradually subsided outside. Luke's fingers traced idle patterns on her bare shoulder, his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. Neither spoke, unwilling to diminish with words what had passed between them. Eventually, exhaustion claimed them both. Juniper drifted into the first truly peaceful sleep she'd known in years, safely anchored in Luke's embrace. He remained awake slightly longer, watching her features soften in repose, marveling at how this woman he'd known for mere hours had penetrated defenses built over a lifetime. Sometime in the pre-dawn stillness, Luke slipped from the bed, retrieving something from his closet safe. Following an impulse he couldn't explain, one completely contrary to his usual methodical nature, he gently lifted Juniper's left hand from where it rested on the pillow. "My grandmother told me I'd know when I found the one who truly saw me," he whispered, though she couldn't hear, "that when it happened, time would become irrelevant." His grandmother's diamond ring, a priceless family heirloom he'd kept despite his cynicism about lasting love, slid perfectly onto her finger. In sleep, Juniper smiled slightly, her hand curling as if to protect this unexpected gift. Luke returned to bed, gathering her against his chest once more. Something fundamental had shifted within him, within them both. Whatever came next, they had shared this perfect night where two damaged souls had recognized each other across the darkness. Morning sunlight streamed through uncurtained windows, bathing the bedroom in golden light when Juniper finally stirred. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. The unfamiliar room, the silk sheets against her naked skin, the pleasant ache in muscles long unused. Then memory returned in a rush of images and sensations from the night before. She stretched languorously, expecting to find Luke beside her. Instead, her hand encountered empty space, still warm from his body. As she raised her arm to push back her tangled hair, sunlight caught something on her finger, sending prismatic rainbows dancing across the wall. Juniper froze, staring at the enormous diamond now adorning her left hand. Before she could process this discovery, Luke appeared in the doorway. Unlike the confident architect from last night, he appeared almost boyish in his vulnerability, carrying a tray with coffee and fresh fruit. Setting the tray aside, he approached the bed slowly, then knelt beside it. His eyes, intense with emotion, held hers as he took her ringed hand in his. "Marry me," he said simply. The world tilted beneath her. This couldn't be happening. Men like Luke Ryder didn't propose to women like her, especially not after a single night. Yet the evidence glittered on her finger and his expression contained no hint of jest. "Luke, we met yesterday," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is impulsive, irrational, Maybe. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I've spent my life calculating structural loads and planning every detail with mathematical precision. This doesn't fit my pattern, and that's precisely why I trust it. Panic flooded her system. We should date, have dinner with friends, argue about movies, learn each other's annoying habits. We will, he assured her. I'm not saying we should get married tomorrow. I'm saying I know, with the same certainty I know about load-bearing, walls and cantilevered structures, that what happened between us last night wasn't casual or temporary. Without a word, Juniper fled to the adjoining bathroom, locking the door behind her. Pressing trembling hands against cold marble, she stared at her wild-eyed reflection. "What have I done?" she whispered to the stranger in the mirror, a woman she barely recognized, flushed with passion, adorned with diamonds, offered a future she'd long ago surrendered. Beyond the door, Luke waited, patient but determined, for the woman who had somehow become essential to his existence in less than 24 hours. Chapter 4. The world turns cruel. 15 minutes passed before Juniper emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in Luke's robe, her face composed but pale. The diamond still glittered on her finger. She hadn't been able to bring herself to remove it, though logic screamed that she should. Luke stood by the windows, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. He turned when he heard the door open, his expression guarded yet hopeful. "I apologize if I frightened you," he said quietly. "That wasn't my intention." Juniper crossed to where he stood, sunlight warming her face. "You didn't frighten me, Luke. I frightened myself." She glanced down at the ring. "This is madness. You know that, don't you? We met yesterday." "Time is relative," he replied, closing the distance between them. "Some people spend decades together and remain strangers. Others connect instantly. Connection isn't commitment." Her voice softened. "This ring, it's exquisite, valuable. It was my grandmother's. She gave it to me before she died, told me to save it for the one who sees you. I never understood what she meant until last night." Emotion tightened Juniper's throat. Part of her wanted to surrender to this beautiful madness, this man who looked at her without fear or judgment. The practical part, the part that had survived 5 years of isolation, knew better. "The world won't allow this," she said finally. "Your world or mine." Luke's hand gently cupped her cheek. "My buildings withstand hurricanes and earthquakes, Juniper, but nothing I've created has felt as essential as what's beginning between us." His phone chimed from the bedside table, breaking the moment. Luke reluctantly checked the screen, his expression darkening. "James needs me at the office. Emergency board meeting." He hesitated. "Will you be here when I return?" The question contained layers of meaning beyond its simplicity. Juniper found herself nodding despite her reservations. "Yes, I'll be here." After Luke left, Juniper wandered the penthouse, coffee in hand, examining the space that reflected its owner's soul. Unlike the cold minimalism she'd expected, Luke's home contained warmth amid its clean lines, bookshelves filled with well-worn volumes, photographs of global architectural wonders, and surprisingly, several pieces of handcrafted pottery that caught her professional eye. Her phone buzzed with a text from Amara. "How was dinner? Details, please." Before Juniper could respond, another message appeared. "Have you seen this? What happened after you left the restaurant?" Attached was a link to Azure Bay's local news site. With growing dread, Juniper clicked it open. The headline screamed across her screen, "Cursed woman ensnares troubled architect." Below was a photo of her and Luke kissing on the Meridian's terrace, his hands tangled in her hair, her body pressed against his. The lighting made the moment appear almost supernatural. their silhouettes outlined by lightning, the storm raging behind them. The article was worse. Sources at the exclusive Meridian restaurant report that notorious Black Widow, Juniper Lark, spent hours in intimate conversation with architect Luke Ryder, whose recent personal scandals have threatened his professional standing. The pair left together during last night's violent storm. Could Ryder be the next victim of Lark's deadly touch, or is this a calculated alliance between two social pariahs? Nausea rose in Juniper's throat. Someone at the restaurant, staff or patron, had betrayed their private moment for profit or entertainment. Her phone began buzzing continuously with notifications as the story spread through social media. "Now you'll kill him too," read one anonymous message. "Gold-digging witch," said another. "He must be truly desperate," commented a third. Luke's phone calls went straight to voicemail. The emergency board meeting, she realized, likely concerned this very story. Their one perfect night was already being poisoned by the world's cruelty. By afternoon, national gossip sites had picked up the story, adding their own sensationalist spin. One unearthed photos of Michael's wrecked car alongside the image of her kissing Luke with the ghoulish caption, "History repeating, Ryder's risky romance." Another featured an exclusive interview with Luke's ex-wife. "I'm concerned for Luke's well-being," Diana Ryder told our reporter. "He's clearly in a vulnerable state after our divorce, and this woman seems to prey on vulnerable men. First, her fiancé, now Luke. He's already dealing with deeply personal medical issues that have affected his self-worth. He doesn't need someone whose history suggests catastrophic patterns." Juniper felt physically ill. The beautiful connection she and Luke had shared was being twisted into something tawdry and exploitative. Worse, she feared the impact on his already threatened career. The doorman called up around 4 o'clock. "Ms. Lark, there are photographers gathering in the lobby. Mr. Ryder suggested you might want to use the service elevator when you leave." So, Luke had anticipated this, had probably been dealing with it all day while she hid in his penthouse. Shame and anger warred within her. This was exactly why she'd maintained her isolation in Azure Bay, because her very existence seemed to attract cruelty. When Luke finally returned after nightfall, exhaustion lined his face. He loosened his tie, dropping his briefcase by the door. Without a word, he crossed to where Juniper stood by the windows and pulled her into an embrace so tight it nearly hurt. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her hair. Juniper pulled back, searching his face. "You have nothing to apologize for. I'm the one who's brought this storm to your door." "No." His voice hardened. "The storm was always there, Juniper. People who delight in others' pain, they create these tempests. We're just the latest targets." Edie moved to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. The board meeting was brutal. 3 members suggested I take a leave of absence until the situation resolves. Juniper accepted the glass, the diamond on her finger catching the light. "And the Harbor Project? The Heritage Foundation has officially withdrawn funding." His laugh held no humor. "Apparently they're concerned about associating with controversial figures because of me." It wasn't a question. Because people are cowards, Juniper. They fear what they don't understand. He held her gaze steadily. "I refused the leave of absence, by the way. Told them they could accept my leadership or my resignation." "Luke, you can't." "I can. I built that firm from nothing. I'll build again if necessary." He touched the ring on her finger. "Some foundations run deeper than any structure I've ever designed." The intensity in his expression both thrilled and terrified her. This man she barely knew was willing to risk everything, his reputation, his career, his future, for what had sparked between them. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence stood before her, unwavering. "I should go back to Azure Bay," she said, quietly. "Give you space to weather this." "Is that what you want?" His question cut through pretense. "What I want doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters." Luke set his glass down, taking both her hands in his. "I'm not asking for an answer to my proposal. That was impulsive, perhaps even foolish. But I am asking you not to run from this, from us, because of what other people think or say." Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a text from Amara. "Juniper, someone broke into your cottage. You need to come home." "What is it?" Luke asked, noting her expression. "My cottage has been broken into." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "I need to go back." "I'm coming with you." "Luke, that will only make things worse." "I don't care." His tone brooked no argument. "Pack whatever you brought. We'll leave in 10 minutes. The drive to Azure Bay took just over an hour, darkness shrouding the coastal highway. Luke's sleek sports car attracted attention even before they reached Juniper's neighborhood, where several police cruisers idled outside her small cottage, their lights splashing red and blue across the weathered siding. Amara rushed forward as they parked. "Thank God you're here. It's bad, Juniper." The cottage door hung from one hinge, the word "witch" spray-painted across it in dripping red letters. Inside was worse. Furniture overturned, books shredded, and most devastating, the few pottery pieces that had survived the studio vandalism now lay in fragments across the floor. A middle-aged officer approached, recognition followed by wariness, crossing his face when he noticed Luke. "Ms. Lark, we've taken photographs of the damage. Not much else we can do tonight." "Fingerprints?" Luke suggested, his professional demeanor masking the anger Juniper could feel radiating from him. "Security footage from neighboring properties?" The officer's expression cooled. "This isn't the city, Mr. Ryder. We know how things work around here." "Meaning you know who did this but won't pursue it," Juniper said flatly. "Meaning sometimes, and things happen for a reason," the officer replied, his implication clear. "Perhaps if certain people made better choices—" "Finish that sentence," Luke interrupted, stepping forward. "And you'll be explaining to your superiors why you're being sued for dereliction of duty and civil rights violations." The officer's face flushed with anger, but he backed down, motioning his colleagues toward the door. "We'll file our report. Good night, Ms. Lark." After the police left, Juniper knelt among the wreckage of her living room, carefully gathering fragments of a blue-glazed bowl, one of her grandmother's pieces she treasured for years. Her fingers bled slightly from the sharp edges, but she barely noticed. "You shouldn't touch that," Amara said gently. "Let me get gloves." Luke surveyed the destruction, architect's eyes cataloging each violation. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "You're not staying here tonight." "I have nowhere else to go," Juniper replied, still collecting pottery shards. "You have me." He knelt beside her, gently taking the broken pieces from her bleeding fingers. "This isn't safe, Juniper. Not the house, not the town. This is my home." Her voice broke on the last word. "Everything I have is here." "Not everything." Luke's eyes held hers, and in them she saw a promise that transcended the chaos surrounding them. "Not anymore." A small crowd had gathered outside, drawn by the police lights and gossip. Through the broken front window, Juniper could see them watching, their faces a mixture of curiosity and judgment. News of her return with Luke had clearly spread quickly. "They're waiting for a show," Amara muttered, glaring toward the window. "Then let's give them one." Luke stood, pulling Juniper gently to her feet. Without warning, he strode to the front door and threw it open, facing the gathered neighbors directly. "Is this who you are?" he called, voice carrying in the night air. People who destroy rather than understand, who judge without knowing. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. I know what you say about her. I know the stories you've spread, but I see someone different, someone who's survived your cruelty with more grace than you deserve. Juniper moved to his side, her hand finding his. The simple gesture drew gasps from several onlookers. I'm taking her somewhere safe tonight, Luke continued. And when we return, if there's any further damage to this property, I'll personally ensure that every responsible party faces consequences, legal and financial. As he turned to lead Juniper to his car, an elderly man stepped forward from the crowd. Miss Lark, he called, his voice wavering with age. I knew your grandmother well. She would be ashamed of how this town has treated you. A murmur passed through the gathered neighbors, some agreeing, others uncomfortable with this public acknowledgement. For the first time, Juniper realized the town's attitude toward her wasn't uniformly hostile. Some had simply remained silent out of fear or indifference. Luke's arms circled her waist protectively as he guided her toward his car. Amara followed with a hastily packed bag containing the few undamaged possessions she could find. As they drove away, Juniper looked back at her violated home, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. I'll make this right, Luke promised, his hand warm on hers. Trust me. In the sanctuary of his car, speeding away from the town that had imprisoned her for 5 years, Juniper finally allowed herself to consider the impossible. That perhaps this man who looked at her without fear, who defended her without hesitation, who saw beyond the labels others had imposed, might actually be the miracle she'd stopped believing in long ago. Where are we going? She asked finally. My coastal house. It's secluded, protected. He glanced at her, determination evident in his profile. No one will hurt you there. And when this blows over, when your business suffers enough that you regret meeting me? Luke pulled the car to the shoulder of the darkened highway, turning to face her fully. Listen to me, Juniper Lark. I have spent my entire life building things that matter, things that last. What's between us, what I felt the moment I saw you, that matters more than any building, any business, any reputation. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb gently wiping away a tear. Let me prove them wrong. Let me love you until there's nothing left of that girl they called unlucky. The intensity of his gaze, the conviction in his voice, broke something inside her, the final wall she'd built to protect herself from hope. Juniper leaned forward, her lips finding his in a kiss that tasted of salt and promise. Take me home, she whispered against his mouth. Home, he agreed. The words somehow both question and answer as they accelerated into the darkness, leaving Adja Bay and its judgments behind. Chapter 5. Deepening Bonds. Luke's coastal property emerged from morning mist like a dream, a modern structure of glass and weathered cedar perched on a rocky promontory surrounded by ancient pines and the endless Pacific. Security gates and a winding private road kept the world at bay, offering sanctuary neither had expected to need so soon. It's beautiful, Juniper said softly as Luke parked. Unlike his city penthouse, this place felt organic, as if grown naturally, from the coastal landscape. I designed it myself, he replied, retrieving her bag, before the firm became successful, when architecture was still about creation rather than commerce. Inside, the house opened to the horizon, walls of glass framing the dramatic coastline. Natural materials, stone, wood, and steel, created a space both commanding and comforting. Despite its modern design, the home felt lived in, personal, in a way Juniper hadn't expected. I come here when I need to remember why I became an architect, Luke explained, when politics and business threatened to overshadow the art. It feels like you, Juniper observed, trailing her fingers along a rough-hewn table, strong, but with unexpected warmth. Their first day passed in quiet recovery. Juniper slept for hours in the guest suite, overlooking a secluded cove, while Luke worked remotely, fielding calls from concerned board members and irate clients. By evening, she emerged to find him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, preparing dinner. "You cook?" she asked, accepting the wine he offered. "Another surprise?" His smile reached his eyes for the first time since the cottage incident. "My mother believed no one should depend entirely on others for basic needs." As they ate on the terrace, conversation flowed easily. Away from prying eyes, they shared parts of themselves usually kept hidden. Luke's childhood dreams of building cities, Juniper's early love of sculpture that led to pottery. "Show me your work," she requested after dinner, gesturing toward a striking blue vase displayed in the living area. "Your real work, not the commercial projects." Luke led her to his home studio, a space filled with architectural drawings and small-scale models that revealed a vision more artistic than his public portfolio suggested. Blueprints for sustainable communities, sketches of buildings that worked with nature rather than conquering it, and most surprisingly, detailed plans for a nursery, one that would never exist in his city apartment. Juniper's fingers traced the loving detail in the nursery drawings, a mobile of stars and planets, built-in bookshelves shaped like trees, a rocking chair positioned to catch morning light. "Despite what they say about you," she said quietly, understanding now the depth of his pain, "you've never stopped planning for children." "Hope persists," he replied, his voice carefully neutral, "even when logic suggests otherwise." The intimacy of this revelation, more profound than their physical connection had been, shifted something between them. Juniper found herself sharing her own hidden vulnerabilities. She showed him the journal she'd managed to grab from the cottage, filled with letters to Michael she'd written after his death, but never sent. "I blame myself for years," she confessed, as they sat before the fireplace, the journal open between them. "If I hadn't asked him to hurry, if I'd been content with the handkerchief I already had." Luke's hand covered hers. "We can't control others' choices or fate's cruelty, Juniper. Only how we survive afterward." That night, as they prepared for bed, Luke showed her to the guest suite. Despite the passionate connection between them, he seemed determined to give her space and time. When he kissed her goodnight at her door, the restraint in his touch was palpable. "You're always welcome in my room," he told her softly. "But there's no rush, Juniper. We have time." Alone in the unfamiliar bed, Juniper stared at the ceiling, listening to waves crash against the rocky shore below. For the first time in years, she felt something dangerous growing within her chest. Hope, fragile but persistent. Sleep claimed her eventually, but not before old fears whispered warnings about the risks of believing in second chances. Nightmares still came, less frequently, but no less intense. She woke gasping, disoriented, momentarily back in Azure Bay, with whispers following her. On those nights, Luke held her without questions, understanding that 5 years of trauma wouldn't disappear in weeks. As days passed, their routine developed naturally. Mornings found them sharing coffee on the terrace, watching waves crash against the rocky shore below. Luke worked remotely from his home office, while Juniper explored the property. Discovering a small garden shed, she began converting into a makeshift pottery studio with Luke's encouragement. Under her fingers, formless clay took shape. Potential, emerging from raw material in a way that mirrored her own gradual transformation. She created pieces unlike any she'd made before, bold, expressive, unapologetically emotional. Luke watched her work sometimes, fascinated by the intensity of her concentration, the way she lost herself completely in creation. A week into their seclusion, James arrived with news from the firm. Juniper observed their conversation from the kitchen, noting the tension in Luke's posture as he received what appeared to be unwelcome information. "What's happened?" she asked after James departed. "The Heritage Foundation has officially withdrawn from the harbor project." Luke's voice remained steady, though his eyes betrayed deeper emotion. "And 3 major clients have suspended their contracts pending resolution of recent controversies." Guilt twisted through Juniper's chest. "Because of me. Because of bigotry and fear," he corrected sharply. "Don't take ownership of their ignorance." That evening, Luke received an invitation to present at an architectural symposium, a prestigious opportunity that could salvage his professional reputation. The timing, just days away, suggested someone was offering him a chance to redeem himself publicly. "You should go," Juniper insisted. "Show them your work still matters, regardless of your personal life." Luke studied her across the dinner table. "Will you come with me?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Appearing together publicly would confirm the relationship gossips had already condemned, potentially destroying what remained of his professional standing. "That would only make things worse," she replied carefully. "Perhaps that's exactly why we should do it." His expression hardened with determination. "I won't hide you away like some shameful secret, Juniper. I refuse to give their judgment that power." When they arrived at the symposium days later, Juniper, wearing a simple blue dress that complemented Luke's charcoal suit, whispers followed them through the crowded exhibition hall. Eyes tracked their movement, conversations pausing as they passed. Luke's hand remained at the small of her back, his touch both protective and possessive. His presentation, a passionate argument for sustainable architecture that honored both human needs and environmental realities, commanded the room's attention. Juniper watched from the front row, pride swelling as he deftly fielded hostile questions that thinly veiled personal attacks. During the reception afterward, she observed from a distance as Luke engaged potential investors, his natural charisma temporarily overcoming their reservations. James worked the room alongside him, clearly relieved by the positive response. "He's risking everything for you," a female voice said beside her. Juniper turned to find an elegant woman studying her with open curiosity. "The question is whether you're worth that sacrifice." "That's not for me to decide," Juniper replied, maintaining her composure. "No, it's for him." The woman sipped champagne thoughtfully. "I've known Luke Ryder for 15 years. I've seen ambitious women, beautiful women, wealthy women try to capture his attention. None succeeded in making him look the way he looks at you." Before Juniper could respond, commotion erupted across the room. A woman, clearly intoxicated, had approached Luke, her voice carrying above the polite conversation. "Still pretending you can satisfy a woman, Ryder? Does your little witch know you're shooting blanks?" The room fell silent. Luke's expression remained impassive, though Juniper could see the tension in his jaw. Without hesitation, she crossed the room to stand beside him, her hand finding his. "I know everything I need to know," she answered clearly, her voice carrying in the hushed space. "Do you?" The woman, who Juniper now recognized as Diana from magazine photographs, flushed with anger. "You have no idea what you're getting into, honey. He'll disappoint you just like he disappointed me." "The only disappointment," Luke replied, his voice controlled but glacial, "is discovering someone's true character too late." His arm circled Juniper's waist. "If you'll excuse us." As they walked away, Juniper felt eyes tracking their exit. The whispers would intensify now, the gossip spread. Yet somehow, standing beside Luke, facing his demons alongside her own, she felt stronger than she had in years. In their hotel suite that night, the adrenaline of confrontation still coursing through them, the careful distance they'd maintained. At the coastal house evaporated. Luke's hands trembled slightly as he removed his tie, his eyes never leaving hers. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Stand with me publicly." "Yes, I did." Juniper moved toward him, certainty replacing the hesitation that had defined her for so long. "I'm tired of hiding, Luke, from judgment, from happiness, from life." His arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him. "Are you sure this is what you want? The scrutiny won't stop. It might get worse." "I want you," she answered simply. "Everything else is just noise." Their lips met with renewed hunger, the restraint of the past week dissolving into passionate certainty. As clothing fell away and they moved toward the bed, Juniper felt something fundamental shifting within her, fear giving way to hope, isolation surrendering to connection. Later, as they lay entwined in the moonlight filtering through hotel curtains, Luke traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Move in with me," he whispered, "not as my guest, as my partner." Juniper raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes, finding nothing but absolute certainty in their depths. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully believe that what they shared wasn't cursed, but blessed, strong enough to emerge from fire, strengthened rather than destroyed by adversity. "I love you," she whispered, the words carrying the weight of complete surrender to hope, to future, to the bond between them that had defied every attempt to break it. Luke's response came in 3 matched words, simple yet transformative in their power. As he sealed the declaration with a kiss, Juniper understood that they had crossed a threshold. Whatever came next, public scorn or private joy, they would face it together. 2 souls who had recognized each other across crowded darkness and refused to let go. Chapter 6. The Price of Protection. The media storm intensified as Juniper moved permanently into Luke's coastal home. Tabloids ran daily speculation about the cursed woman and her influence over the once respected architect. Business publications questioned Luke's stability and judgment. Even architectural journals began mentioning the personal controversy surrounding his latest projects. Luke seemed to weather it all with remarkable composure, though Juniper noticed the deepening lines around his eyes, the increasing tension in his shoulders. Each morning brought new emails from James detailing another client's concerns or another investor's withdrawal. "The Westlake Center contract is officially suspended," Luke announced one morning, setting his tablet aside more forcefully than necessary. "That's 3 major projects now." Juniper looked up from her coffee, guilt twisting through her chest. "Because of me." "Because of ignorance," he corrected sharply, crossing to her side. "Don't take ownership of their prejudice." Despite his reassurances, Juniper felt the weight of responsibility. Luke had built his reputation through years of dedication and talent. Now that reputation was crumbling because he'd chosen to stand by her. Her weekly sessions with Dr. Winters provided tools she'd never had, ways to challenge catastrophic thinking, techniques to ground herself when panic rose like floodwater. "Healing isn't linear," the therapist reminded her during a particularly difficult session. "Some days will still feel like drowning." The situation reached critical mass when a legal letter arrived threatening a defamation lawsuit if Luke continued to disparage his ex-wife publicly. The veiled threat was immediately followed by documents appearing in several business publications, suggesting Luke had falsified medical reports during his divorce proceedings. The leaked records painted him as manipulative and dishonest. Though heavily redacted and without context, the damage was immediate. That evening, James arrived unannounced, his expression grim as he joined them on the terrace overlooking the darkening ocean. "The board has called an emergency session for tomorrow morning," he informed Luke, accepting the whiskey offered with visible relief. They're voting on your position as CEO. Luke's face remained impassive. They want me to step down. Temporarily, James emphasized, until this blows over. And if I refuse? James glanced uncomfortably toward Juniper. They're prepared to force the issue. Using what leverage? Luke's voice carried dangerous calm. The partnership agreement gives them grounds if your personal conduct threatens the firm's stability. James downed his whiskey in one swallow. 3 major clients have suspended contracts. The Heritage Foundation withdrawal became public yesterday. The firm's stock is down 18%. Luke stared out at the darkening horizon, silence stretching between them. You know these accusations are fabricated. I know, James agreed, but perception creates reality in our business. The board is suggesting... He hesitated again, eyes flickering toward Juniper. Say it, Luke demanded, that if you created distance between yourself and certain personal connections, they might reconsider. Juniper's stomach clenched. There it was, the ultimatum she'd been expecting since that first night. Her presence in Luke's life was officially costing him everything he'd spent his career building. Get out! Luke's voice remained perfectly controlled, but his eyes blazed with fury. Luke, tell the board they'll have my decision tomorrow. He stood, escorting his partner firmly toward the door. And James, consider very carefully which side you're taking here. After James departed, Luke returned to find Juniper gathering her few possessions in the guest bedroom she'd stopped using weeks ago. What are you doing? He asked from the doorway. What's necessary? Her hands trembled slightly as she folded a sweater he'd bought her. I won't be the reason you lose everything you've built. Luke crossed the room in 3 strides, gently taking the sweater from her hands. You're not doing this. You've known me 3 weeks, Luke. Your company represents years of work, your life's purpose. No. He cupped her face between his palms. Buildings rise and fall. Companies change hands. What matters is what we build between people: trust, understanding, love. Juniper's eyes widened slightly, searching his face for doubt or hesitation. She found none. They're forcing you to choose, she whispered. They already did. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And I've already chosen. The next morning, Luke dressed with particular care in his finest suit. Juniper watched from their bed as he prepared for the board meeting, his movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. Whatever happens today, he told her, leaning down for a lingering kiss, remember that some foundations run deeper than any structure I've ever designed. Luke's board meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock. By noon, his decision had made headlines across business publications. Ryder walks, architect chooses controversial relationship over CEO position. The article detailed how Luke had declined to step down temporarily, instead offering his immediate resignation when the board suggested his personal life was negatively impacting the firm. Accompanying photos showed him leaving the corporate headquarters, expression composed but determined, ignoring reporters' shouted questions. By the time he returned to the coastal house, Juniper had seen the news. She met him at the door, eyes bright with unshed tears. You shouldn't have done that, she said simply. I did exactly what was necessary. He loosened his tie, exhaustion evident beneath his composure. And I'd do it again. That night, as storm clouds gathered offshore, Luke held her close in their bed, his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. We'll rebuild, he murmured against her hair. Together. Juniper wanted to believe him, yet as lightning illuminated the room, casting momentary shadows across his sleeping face, she couldn't silence the voice whispering that she would ultimately destroy him, just as everyone had always claimed. Just before dawn, she slipped from his arms and dressed silently. The diamond ring, which she'd continued wearing despite never formally accepting his proposal, she placed carefully on his bedside table. Beside it, she left a note containing the hardest words she'd ever written. "Find someone who brings you luck instead of misery. You deserve better than me." As she closed the front door behind her, rain began falling, gentle at first, then with increasing fury, as if the sky itself mourned what necessity had forced her to surrender. Chapter 7. Storm of Reckoning. Luke woke to emptiness, both in his bed and in his chest. His fingers found only cool sheets where Juniper's warmth should have been. When he opened his eyes, morning sunlight glinted off the diamond ring on his bedside table, the small folded note beneath it confirming what his heart already knew. Hafi read her words once, then again, searching for meaning beyond the painful simplicity. The note crumpled in his fist as he moved through the house calling her name, knowing already she wouldn't answer. Security footage showed her leaving at dawn, a small bag over her shoulder, pausing once to look back at the house before disappearing, down the private road. She'd taken nothing he'd given her, not clothes, not jewelry, not even the pottery wheel he'd installed in the renovated garden shed. For 3 days, Luke existed in a fog of disbelief and mounting anger. He ignored calls from James, from other board members suddenly regretting their ultimatum as the firm's stock continued falling. The only person he contacted was Amara, who reluctantly confirmed Juniper had returned to Azure Bay. "She's at the cottage," Amara told him, concern evident even over the phone. "Or what's left of it. Luke, she's not well. She barely eats, barely sleeps, but she won't listen when I tell her to call you." "I'm coming there," he said, decision crystallizing. As he spoke, that might make things worse. Things can't get worse. His voice hardened with certainty. "She didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because she believes she's protecting me." 4 days after Juniper's departure, Luke attended a charity gala he'd normally have avoided, knowing that his ex-wife would be present with her new fiancé, a prominent real estate developer. The event represented his first public appearance since his resignation, and photographers swarmed as he entered alone, ignoring their shouted questions about Juniper's absence. He spotted Diana across the crowded ballroom, her calculating smile faltering slightly as their eyes met. Luke moved through the crowd with deliberate purpose, stopping directly before her and her visibly uncomfortable companion. "Luke," she greeted with false warmth. "What a surprise to see you here. I'd heard you were indisposed." "You mean you hoped I was destroyed?" His voice remained conversational, though several nearby guests shifted nervously, sensing the undercurrent. "Those medical records you leaked were quite creative. Selective editing has always been your specialty." "I have no idea what you're talking about." Her smile never wavered, though her eyes darted toward nearby journalists. "Though I am concerned about your judgment lately. That woman has a history." "Her name is Juniper," Luke interrupted, voice dropping to a dangerous softness. "And the only person with a concerning history is standing right in front of me." Her fiancé stepped forward, hand extended placatingly. "Look, Ryder, we're all friends here." "No, we're not." Luke's focus remained laser-sharp on Diana. "Friends don't fabricate stories to destroy reputations. Friends don't manipulate medical records for tabloid fodder. Friends don't sabotage careers out of spite." The room had grown unnaturally quiet, guests pretending not to listen while straining to catch every word. Diana's smile finally faltered as she realized the audience witnessing her humiliation. "You're making a scene," she hissed. "I'm making truth public," he corrected, "something you've worked very hard to prevent." For a moment, vulnerability cracked her perfect facade. "You replaced me so easily," she whispered, hatred mixing with something like pain in her expression. "While I can't escape your shadow." The raw honesty of her admission caught Luke off guard. Before he could respond, her fiancé, an imposing man several inches taller than Luke, gripped his shoulder. "That's enough. You need to leave." Luke glanced at the man's hand with such cold disdain that he immediately removed it. "I've said what I came to say, but understand this. If you spread one more lie, if you plant one more story, if you do anything that impacts Juniper Lark's life, I will dedicate every resource I have to ensuring everyone knows exactly who and what you are." As he turned to leave, Diana's composure finally cracked completely. "She's ruined you," she called after him, loud enough for nearby journalists to capture every word. "Your reputation, your company, everything we built, all destroyed because you couldn't see she's poison." Luke paused, then turned back slowly. The entire room held its collective breath as he approached her once more, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "You never understood what matters," he said quietly. "Not during our marriage, not now. Buildings can be rebuilt, companies can be replaced. What can't be replaced is finding someone who sees you completely and loves you anyway." His public confrontation became headline news by morning. Most coverage painted him as unstable, desperate, possibly unraveling without the steadying influence of his firm. Several gossip sites suggested his defense of Juniper confirmed rumors of brainwashing or manipulation. 2 days later, driving. Through torrential rain toward Azure Bay, Luke barely registered the news reports playing on his car radio. His focus remained singular: finding Juniper, making her understand that her sacrifice was unnecessary, convincing her to return. The coastal highway had flooded in several places, forcing detours that added hours to his journey. By the time he reached the outskirts of Azure Bay, night had fallen and the storm had intensified to near hurricane force. Trees bent sideways in the howling wind, debris skittered across the road, and emergency vehicles passed with increasing frequency, sirens wailing. When Luke finally reached Juniper's neighborhood, he found chaos. The storm had caused significant coastal erosion, threatening several properties along the bluff, including her cottage. Police barricades blocked vehicular access, but Luke abandoned his car and continued on foot, rain lashing his face as he fought against the wind. At the cottage, he found a scene from his worst nightmares. The rear portion of the structure hung precariously over the eroding cliff edge, while a group of locals gathered at a safe distance, watching with morbid fascination as emergency workers assessed the situation. "Where is she?" Luke demanded, grabbing the arm of a police officer. "Where's Juniper Lark?" "Sir, you need to stay behind the safety line." "The woman who lives here," Luke interrupted desperately. "Where is she?" A fisherman wearing a rain-slicked yellow jacket overhead. "Saw her go inside about an hour ago," he offered. "Crazy. Woman wouldn't listen when we told her it wasn't safe. Said something about getting her grandmother's things." Cold terror gripped Luke's chest. Without hesitation, he ducked under the safety tape and sprinted toward the cottage, ignoring shouts from emergency personnel. The front door hung open, rain pouring through the damaged roof as he entered. "Juniper!" he called, voice nearly lost. In the storm's fury, he found her in what remained of the bedroom, frantically stuffing photographs and small keepsakes into a duffel bag. She looked up at his entrance, shock and disbelief crossing her face. "Luke, what are you?" "We need to go now." He crossed to her, taking her arm. "The cliff is giving way." As if confirming his words, the cottage groaned ominously, the floor tilting slightly beneath their feet. Juniper's eyes widened in fear, but she pulled against his grip. "My grandmother's journals," she insisted. "I can't leave them." "Juniper, there's no time. A deafening crack interrupted him as the rear wall of the bedroom separated from the floor, creating a yawning gap through which they could see churning waves far below. Luke grabbed Juniper around the waist, physically dragging her toward the front of the cottage as more floorboards splintered behind them. They burst through the front door just as a massive section of the cliff face and half the cottage with it slid into the ocean below. The gathered crowd gasped collectively, several people rushing forward to help as Luke and Juniper collapsed onto solid ground, rain still pounding them mercilessly. Luke held her trembling body against his chest, his heart racing with the narrowness of their escape. When he finally trusted himself to speak, his voice emerged rough with emotion. "Don't you ever do that again," he said against her rain-soaked hair. "Don't you ever leave me." Juniper pulled back slightly, her face pale with shock and lingering fear. "I was protecting you," she whispered. "Everything you built, your reputation, your career, it was all falling apart because of me." "No." Luke framed her face between his hands, rain streaming between them. "It was falling apart because of ignorance and cruelty. And none of it, not the firm, not the buildings, not the reputation, none of it matters without you." Lightning illuminated her tear-streaked face, vulnerability and hope warring in her expression. "I'm cursed, Luke. Everyone I love suffers. Then we'll suffer together." His thumbs wiped rain and tears from her cheeks. "Because I love you, Juniper Lark. I've loved you since I first saw you walk into that restaurant. And nothing, not public opinion, not professional setbacks, not even your own fears, will change that." The word she'd avoided, had feared claiming, hung between them, made more powerful by the storm raging around them, by the destruction of her past, quite literally crumbling into the sea. "I love you too," she finally whispered, the admission breaking something free inside her. "God help me, I've tried not to." Luke's mouth found hers in a kiss that defied the elements, passionate, claiming, healing. As emergency workers and townspeople watched in stunned silence, they clung to each other amid the storm's fury, two souls who had finally stopped running from the connection that had claimed them from the first. As news spread about Mrs. Patterson's revelations regarding Michael's heart condition, several townspeople approached Juniper with awkward, insufficient apologies. "We should have questioned what we were told," admitted the grocery store owner who had once refused to serve her. The words came too late to erase years of ostracism, but their discomfort carried its own form of justice. When they finally separated, Luke helped her to her feet, his arms supporting her as they walked away from the ruined cottage and its weight of painful memories. Behind them, another section of cliff collapsed into the churning ocean, erasing what remained of Juniper's prison of isolation. "Where will we go?" she asked, voice small against the storm's diminishing roar. Luke's arm tightened around her waist, anchoring her against both physical and emotional uncertainty. "Home," he answered simply. "We're going home." Chapter 8. Midnight Sacrifice. The storm continued its assault on the coast through the night, forcing Luke and Juniper to take shelter at a roadside motel on the outskirts of Azure Bay. The shabby room with its faded wallpaper and sagging mattress couldn't have been further from Luke's elegant homes, yet neither noticed their surroundings. The near-death experience at the cottage had stripped away everything but the essential truth between them. "I need to leave Azure Bay," Juniper admitted as they sat on the bed's edge, a scratchy blanket around her shoulders. "Not just temporarily, permanently." Luke studied her face, still pale from shock, but showing a new resolve. "The cottage was your last tie here." "It was my prison," she corrected softly. "I stayed because leaving felt like surrender. But there's nothing left for me in this town, just ghosts and cruel memories." Lightning briefly illuminated the small room, thunder following almost immediately. The storm seemed determined to erase the past, washing away years of pain and isolation with its cleansing fury. "When the road's clear," Luke promised, "we'll go home, together." Morning brought watery sunshine and receding floodwaters. News reports detailed the storm's devastation along the coast, including dramatic footage of what remained of Juniper's cottage sliding into the sea. Local coverage mentioned her narrow escape with an unidentified man, avoiding any direct reference to Luke. As they prepared to leave the motel, the manager knocked on their door, expression uncomfortable. "Ms. Lark, there's someone here to see you." In the shabby lobby waited Mrs. Patterson, the elderly nurse who had attended Michael in his final hours. Her weathered face carried both concern and determination as she approached Juniper. "I heard about the cottage," she said, hands clutching a worn leather portfolio. "When they said you nearly went with it, I knew I couldn't keep silent any longer." Juniper tensed visibly. "Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate your concern, but it wasn't your fault." The elderly woman's words silenced whatever Juniper had planned to say. "His death wasn't your fault, child. It never was." Luke stepped closer, his hand finding the small of Juniper's back as she swayed slightly. "What do you mean?" Juniper whispered. Mrs. Patterson glanced around the motel lobby, then lowered her voice. Michael had a congenital heart condition, one his family kept hidden because they feared it would impact his medical career. He wasn't supposed to drive long distances, experience intense emotions, or engage in strenuous activity. She opened the portfolio, removing several medical documents. "I wasn't supposed to keep these after his death, but something told me they might be needed someday. He was warned against rushing or exerting himself in any way. The rain, the winding road, his determination to reach you quickly. It was a perfect storm of risks he'd been cautioned against repeatedly." Juniper stared at the documents, her fingers tracing the official medical notations and Michael's signature, acknowledging the warnings. "His family knew?" "They knew," Mrs. Patterson confirmed grimly. "But it was easier to let a grieving young woman become the town's scapegoat than admit their son died because he ignored medical advice they'd pressured him to keep secret." Tears slid silently down Juniper's cheeks as 5 years of undeserved guilt began crumbling under the weight of truth. Luke's arm circled her waist, supporting her physically as the emotional foundation she'd built her isolation upon shifted irreparably. "Why are you telling me this now?" Juniper finally asked. The elderly woman's eyes softened with compassion. "Because I watched you punish yourself for years while this town reinforced your guilt. When I saw you with him," she nodded toward Luke, "for the first time you looked alive again. Then when the cottage nearly took you, it felt like a sign. Some truth shouldn't remain buried." After Mrs. Patterson left, Juniper sat stunned in the passenger seat of Luke's car, the medical documents clutched in her lap. They drove in silence for nearly an hour before she finally spoke. "5 years," she said quietly. 5 years of believing I killed him, of accepting that I deserved the town's hatred." Luke reached across the console to take her hand. "You survived what would have broken most people. That strength is part of who you are now." "Not strength," she corrected. "Punishment. I stayed because I believed I deserved to suffer. And now?" Juniper gazed out at the coastline passing. Beyond the window, the same view she'd limited herself to for half a decade. "Now I want to live." The revelation, simple yet profound, settled between them as Luke drove toward his coastal home. By unspoken agreement, they bypassed the city, where his penthouse and former office stood. Neither was ready to face the public scrutiny that awaited them there. As they approached the security gates of Luke's property, a package awaited them. Juniper's grandmother's rocking chair, salvaged from the cottage before the storm and restored by the town's furniture maker. The note read simply, "This belongs with you. I'm sorry we forgot what community means." The house appeared unchanged when they arrived, yet everything felt different. As Luke carried their few belongings inside, Juniper moved through the spaces with new awareness. This wasn't just his sanctuary anymore. It was becoming theirs. The realization carried both comfort and terror. That evening, as sunset painted the sky in impossible colors, they sat on the terrace overlooking the ocean. The storm had cleared the air, leaving crystalline visibility and gentle waves that belied yesterday's violence. "What happens now?" Juniper asked, voicing the question that had hovered between them since their escape from the cottage. Luke considered, before answering. "Professionally, I have options. 3 competing firms have already approached me. Several private clients have expressed interest in working directly with me, outside any corporate structure. You could rebuild." "I will rebuild," he corrected. "But differently this time, on my terms." Juniper hesitated, then asked the question that truly concerned her. "And us? What happens with us now?" Luke turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "That depends entirely on what you want, Juniper." "What I want?" She laughed softly, the sound carrying lingering disbelief. "No one has asked what I want in years. I'm asking." His hand covered hers on the table between them. "What do you want?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Juniper closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to imagine a future unconstrained by guilt and self-imposed limitation. "I want to create again," she said finally. "Not just pottery, though that too. I want to build a life that isn't defined by tragedy or others' judgments." Her fingers tightened around his. "I want to see if what's between us is strong enough to withstand whatever comes next." Luke lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her palm. "I never had any doubt about that." The following week brought unexpected developments. A prominent architectural journal published an exposé detailing how Luke's ex-wife had manipulated public opinion through planted stories and selective disclosure of private information. The article included testimony from Luke's former doctor, confirming that medical records released to tabloids had been heavily edited to create a false narrative about his fertility issues. As public opinion began shifting, Luke received a call from James. The board had unanimously voted to request his return as CEO with a formal apology for their ultimatum regarding his personal life. "They're panicking," James explained. "The stock has dropped 22% since your resignation. 3 senior architects have threatened to leave. Clients are withdrawing not because of your relationship, but because of how the firm treated you." Luke listened impassively, seated at his home office desk while Juniper worked in her newly expanded pottery studio nearby. "And if I refuse?" "Then I resign too," James replied simply. "I should have stood with you from the beginning. I'm sorry, Luke." After ending the call, Luke found Juniper shaping clay on her wheel, focused intently on the emerging form beneath her skilled hands. Under her fingers, formless clay took shape, potential emerging from raw material in a way that mirrored her own gradual transformation. Watching her create, seeing the peace and purpose in her expression, crystallized the decision he'd been considering since their return. "The board wants me back," he said when she looked up, sensing his presence. Juniper's hand stilled on the clay. "What will you do?" "Decline." He moved closer, studying the elegant vase, taking shape beneath her fingers. "I'm starting my own practice, smaller, more selective. projects that matter, with people who share my values. Can you afford that financially? Luke smiled. I've never been motivated primarily by money, Juniper. You know that. She wiped clay from her hands, studying him thoughtfully. What about public opinion? The scandal? Me? Public opinion changes direction like wind, he observed, helping her to her feet. What matters is whether we're still standing when the storm passes. Her arms circled his waist, leaving faint clay prints on his shirt. And your ex-wife? The tabloids. Let them talk, Luke murmured against her hair. We know the truth. That night, as they lay entwined in his bed, now undeniably theirs, Luke traced idle patterns on Juniper's bare shoulder. The passion between them had only deepened with time and shared challenges, each encounter both familiar and newly discovering. Marry me, he whispered against her skin. Juniper turned in his arms to face him, moonlight illuminating her serious expression. You still want that? After everything it's cost you? Luke's hand cupped her cheek. The only true cost would be losing you. Everything else is temporary. She studied him in the darkness, searching for doubt or reservation in his features. Finding none, she asked the question that had lingered since that first morning when she'd fled to the bathroom in panic. Why me? Why us? We barely knew each other when you first proposed. My grandmother once told me I'd know my perfect match instantly, that when it happened, time would become irrelevant, he replied, echoing his unheard words from that first night. I thought it was sentimental nonsense until I saw you walk into that restaurant. Juniper's eyes glistened with unshed tears, the last of her resistance crumbling beneath the weight of his certainty. She thought of Michael's medical records, of the cliff collapse that had swept away her cottage, of Luke risking everything to stand beside her when the world turned cruel. Perhaps some curses were really blessings in harsh disguise. Perhaps some broken paths led to unexpected destinations. Perhaps what looked like bad luck was actually the universe clearing space for something miraculous. Yes, she whispered against his lips, I'll marry you. As Luke claimed her mouth with renewed hunger, the diamond ring he'd kept in his bedside drawer since her return found its way back onto her finger, no longer a symbol of impulsive madness, but of hard-won certainty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The insurance investigators would question everything. Why valuable designs weren't stored in a fireproof safe, whether proper security measures had been in place. 2 clients had already withdrawn when Luke couldn't guarantee deadlines. But tonight, in the sanctuary they'd created together, nothing existed but the truth between them, a connection that had survived judgment, separation, and the collapse of carefully constructed lives to emerge stronger and more certain than ever before. Chapter 9. Trial by Fire. News of their engagement spread quickly, thanks to a photographer who captured the moment Luke and Juniper left an upscale jewelry store where they'd selected a delicate sapphire band to complement his grandmother's diamond. The image, her radiant smile, his protective arm around her waist, the glittering rings catching sunlight, appeared across social media within hours, igniting a fresh wave of public interest. Unlike previous coverage, the tone had shifted subtly. Architect rebuilds life after scandal, read one headline. Star-crossed lovers defy fate, declared another. Though still sensationalist, the articles no longer portrayed their relationship as something shameful or dangerous. The narrative was transforming, their love story becoming one of perseverance rather than controversy. What the media couldn't capture was the quiet joy blossoming between them as they planned both their wedding and their shared future. Luke had purchased office space in a converted warehouse overlooking the harbor, where he was establishing his independent practice with 3 talented architects who had resigned from his former firm to join him. Juniper had begun showing her pottery at a prestigious gallery, whose owner recognized the emotional depth in her work, pieces that told stories of brokenness transformed into beauty. Your pieces tell stories of resilience, the gallery owner observed during the exhibition opening, studying a cobalt blue vase with fracture lines filled with gold. There's something triumphant in how you handle imperfection. Juniper glanced across the crowded gallery to where Luke stood speaking with potential clients, his hand occasionally touching the small of his back, as if reassuring himself of her presence. "I create from experience," she replied simply. The exhibition proved unexpectedly successful. Art critics praised the authentic emotional resonance in Juniper's work, with several pieces selling on opening night. For the first time in years, she experienced public recognition for her talent rather than whispered judgment for her past. The transformation left her both elated and slightly disoriented, as if she'd stepped into someone else's life. "How does it feel?" Luke asked as they drove home from the gallery, moonlight silvering the coastal road. "Being celebrated, rather, than feared?" Juniper considered the question carefully. "Unfamiliar," she admitted, "but in the best possible way, like walking into sunshine after years in shadow." Luke's hand found hers across the console, his thumb tracing the outline of her engagement rings. "You deserve every moment of this. Juniper, your talent, your success, your happiness." 3 weeks after their engagement, Luke received an unexpected visitor at his new office. His ex-wife arrived unannounced, her usual polished appearance slightly frayed at the edges, designer suit impeccable, but eyes betraying sleepless nights. "You've destroyed me," she stated without preamble, closing his office door behind her with controlled precision. "Are you satisfied now?" Luke leaned back in his chair, studying her with detached curiosity. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play innocent." She paced before his desk like a caged animal. That expose in the architectural journal, the medical records proving I manipulated information. My firm is dropping me as a client. My fiancé postponed our wedding. Even my father questions my judgment. "Actions have consequences," Luke observed calmly. "Something you never seemed to grasp during our marriage." "She won't make you happy," Diana hissed, desperation edging her voice. "That cursed woman. She'll destroy you eventually, just like she destroyed her fiancé." Luke stood slowly, his expression hardening. "You know nothing about Juniper, nothing about what we've built together. And you never will, because you're incapable of understanding love that isn't transactional." "Love?" She laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it? You barely know her." "I know her completely," Luke countered, "just as she knows me. That's what terrifies you, that I've found something real while you're still trading status and appearance for affection." For a moment, vulnerability cracked her perfect facade. "You replaced me so easily," she whispered, hatred mixing with something like pain in her expression, "while I can't escape your shadow." The raw honesty of her admission caught Luke off guard. Before he could respond, she straightened. Composure, returning like a mask sliding back into place. "You'll regret this," she whispered, "both of you." After she left, Luke dismissed the encounter as another desperate attempt to unsettle him. He mentioned it to Juniper that evening more as an anecdote than a warning, both of them accustomed to Diana's dramatic tendencies. "Should we be concerned?" Juniper asked as they prepared dinner together, a domestic rhythm they'd established in recent weeks. Luke pressed a kiss to her temple as he reached past her for wine glasses. "She's always been more talk than action. This is just her pride speaking." 3 days later, they attended a charity gala supporting ocean conservation, Luke's first major public appearance since establishing his new practice. The event represented a strategic opportunity to reconnect with potential clients and demonstrate his professional resilience. Juniper wore a gown the color of midnight ocean depths, its fluid silk catching light with every movement. Her only jewelry was the engagement rings and simple diamond earrings Luke had given her that morning. "To match the stars in your eyes," he'd said, his typical architectural precision momentarily replaced by unabashed romanticism. As they circulated through the crowded ballroom, Juniper noted the subtle shift in how people received them, curiosity replacing judgment, interest supplanting disdain. Several of Luke's former clients approached to discuss potential projects, while art enthusiasts recognized Juniper from her gallery opening. "Mr. Ryder," called a distinguished older gentleman, approaching with hand extended. "Harold Kingsley. I've admired your harbor designs for years." Luke shook the offered hand, professional charm engaged. "Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. The harbor project remains close to my heart, despite its current status. Perhaps we could discuss reviving it," Kingsley suggested, "under your new practice, without certain political complications. My foundation is looking for sustainable coastal development opportunities." As Luke and Kingsley delved into architectural possibilities, Juniper excused herself to visit the ladies' room. The evening was proceeding better than either had anticipated, with several promising connections already established. Perhaps the worst of the public judgment was truly behind them. She had just finished touching up her lipstick when the bathroom door swung open to reveal Diana, elegant in crimson silk, that matched the dangerous gleam in her eyes. The two women regarded each other in the mirror's reflection, neither speaking immediately. "Congratulations," Diana finally offered, her smile not reaching her eyes. "You've accomplished what a dozen socialites failed to achieve. Domesticating Luke Ryder." Juniper turned slowly to face her directly. "Is there something specific you want? Or did you just come to demonstrate your bitterness?" "Oh, I'm not bitter," came the silky response. "I'm fascinated. What special talents do you possess that captivated him so completely? What mysterious power does the infamous cursed woman wield?" "The power of seeing him as a person rather than a possession," Juniper replied evenly. "Of loving him for who he is rather than what he represents." Diana's perfectly manicured hand closed around Juniper's wrist, fingers digging into flesh. With surprising strength, "He was mine first. Everything he built with me beside him. You're just enjoying the rewards of my investment." Juniper extracted her wrist deliberately, refusing to show pain despite the marks blooming on her skin. "Luke isn't a stock portfolio. He's a human being who deserves love without conditions or expectations." "How poetic," Diana sneered. "But we both know this fairy tale won't last. Your curse will catch up with you, it always does. And when Luke finally sees what everyone else does, you'll lose everything, just like before." Juniper stepped past her toward the door, determined to end the uncomfortable encounter. "I'm sorry for whatever pain drove you to become this person. I truly am." The unexpected compassion seemed to enrage Diana more than any insult could have. As Juniper reached for the door handle, she felt hands shove her forcefully from behind. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, shock replacing her composure. "Stay away from him," Diana hissed, her carefully maintained facade shattering completely. "Or I promise you'll regret it." When Juniper returned to the gala, she said nothing about the confrontation, unwilling to disrupt the successful evening. Luke was deep in conversation with Harold Kingsley and two other potential investors about reviving the harbor project under his new practice. The excitement in his eyes, the passion as he described sustainable elements of the design, these were worth protecting from the ugliness of his past relationship. Later that night, as they prepared for bed in their coastal home, Luke noticed the bruises forming on Juniper's wrist. His expression darkened as she reluctantly recounted the bathroom confrontation. "This is unacceptable," he said, voice tight with controlled anger. "I should call security, press charges." "For what? Harsh words and a shove?" Juniper shook her head. "She's lashing out because she's lost control over you, over the narrative, over her carefully constructed image." Luke gently traced the marks on her skin, his touch feather-light. "I don't want you hurt because of my past mistakes. I'm stronger than I look," Juniper reminded him, covering his hand with hers. "We both are." The following morning brought unexpected news. Harold Kingsley had officially commissioned Luke's firm to redesign the harbour project with full funding and expanded environmental elements. Even more surprisingly, two prestigious architectural magazines requested interviews focused on Luke's innovative new practice rather than personal controversy. "Things are turning around," Luke observed as they shared breakfast on the terrace, ocean breezes carrying away the lingering tension from the previous night's encounter. Finally. That afternoon, while Luke met with his growing team about the Harbour Commission, Juniper worked in her pottery studio, losing herself in the therapeutic rhythm of the wheel. The unexpected sound of tires on gravel pulled her from creative focus. Through the studio windows, she spotted an unfamiliar car approaching the house, sleek, expensive, and moving too fast for the winding driveway. She recognized the driver immediately. Diana, expression fixed with determination that sent warning signals through Juniper's body. Wiping clay from her hands, she stepped outside just as the car screeched to a halt. "You need to leave," Juniper called firmly, positioning herself between the unwelcome visitor and the house. "Luke isn't here, and you're trespassing." Diana emerged from her car, something clutched in her right hand that Juniper couldn't immediately identify. "I tried to warn you both. I tried to be reasonable, but neither of you would listen. Whatever problem you have with Luke or me, this isn't the way to resolve it," Juniper replied, keeping her voice calm despite mounting apprehension. "Please leave before this escalates further." "It's already escalated," came the chilling response. "He destroyed everything I built. Now I'll return the favor." Too late, Juniper recognized the object in Diana's hand, a small gasoline container. With horrifying purpose, she strode toward the detached wood workshop, where Luke kept his architectural models and original drawings, including all plans for the newly commissioned harbor project. "Stop!" Juniper moved to intercept her, but Diana was quicker, splashing liquid across the workshop's wooden exterior. The sharp smell of gasoline filled the air as she produced a lighter from her pocket. "You're both cursed now," she said with eerie calm, flame igniting with a flick of her thumb. What happened next unfolded with nightmarish clarity. The flame touched gasoline-soaked wood, igniting instantly. Fire raced along the workshop's exterior with unnatural speed, smoke billowing skyward. Juniper grabbed a garden hose, knowing, even as she did that, it would be inadequate against the rapidly spreading flames. Diana watched with detached fascination for several seconds before the reality of her actions seemed to penetrate. Her expression shifted from satisfaction to horror as the fire grew beyond expectation, embers carried by ocean breezes toward the main house. "I didn't mean," she began, backing toward her car. "I only wanted to destroy his work, not—" "Call 911!" Juniper shouted, already dialing Luke's number as she continued futile efforts with the garden hose. The workshop was beyond saving. Flames now reaching through its roof, heat intensifying to unbearable levels. By the time Luke arrived, the fire had spread to a section of the main house, despite Juniper's desperate attempts to contain it. Fire engines wailed in the distance as he pulled her away from danger, his face ashen with fear rather than for the property. "Are you hurt?" His hands frantically checked her for injuries, finding only smoke-stained clothes and exhaustion. "I'm fine," she assured him, coughing slightly from smoke inhalation. "But your workshop, all your designs, They don't matter. His arms encircled her with fierce protectiveness. Nothing in that building matters compared to you. Firefighters battled the blaze for hours, eventually containing it after the workshop had been completely destroyed and a portion of the main house severely damaged. Through it all, Luke and Juniper remained together, watching from a safe distance as Diana was questioned by police, then placed in a patrol car. She'll face serious charges, an officer informed them. Arson, trespassing, attempted assault at minimum. Luke nodded numbly, his arm never leaving Juniper's waist. We'll cooperate fully with the investigation. When authorities finally allowed them to assess the damage, the full impact became clear. The workshop was a total loss. All original drawings for the harbor project, years of architectural models, and Luke's private designs reduced to ash. The main house had suffered smoke and water damage throughout one wing, including their bedroom. Luke spent 17 hours straight recreating crucial elements of the harbor design from memory, his hands cramping, eyes bloodshot. We'll never recover everything, he admitted to Juniper. Some details, some inspirations are simply gone. 2 clients withdrew when deadlines couldn't be guaranteed. The harbor project continued only because Kingsley insisted Luke's vision was irreplaceable, granting a 3-month extension that meant Luke would work even on their honeymoon. Standing amid the destruction, Juniper felt a terrible weight settling in her chest. Once again, her presence in someone's life had brought disaster. The curse that had followed her for years seemed to have struck again, more destructively than ever before. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, voice breaking. "This happened because of me, because of us." Luke turned to her, surprise replacing the grim assessment on his face. "This happened because someone made terrible choices, Juniper. Not because of you. Not because of any curse. Your work, your home, can be rebuilt." His hands framed her face with infinite tenderness. "I'm an architect, remember? Creating from destruction is what I do." The ghost of a smile touched his lips. "And you're an artist who turns broken things into something more beautiful." As smoke still hung in the air around them, Luke pulled her into his arms, his heartbeat steady against her cheek. "This isn't evidence of a curse, Juniper. It's proof of how far someone will go when consumed by bitterness and jealousy. Our love threatened her because it's real, powerful enough to withstand even this." That night, they stayed at a nearby hotel, both physically and emotionally exhausted. As moonlight filtered through unfamiliar curtains, Luke held Juniper close, his lips brushing her temple. "When I thought you might be hurt," he confessed quietly, "nothing else mattered. Not the house, not the designs, not even the harbor project, just you." Juniper raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes, finding nothing but absolute certainty in their depths. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully believe that what they shared wasn't cursed, but blessed, strong enough to emerge from literal fire, strengthened rather than destroyed by adversity. "I love you," she whispered, the words carrying the weight of complete surrender, to hope, to future, to the bond between them that had defied every attempt to break it. Luke's response came not in words, but in touch, his mouth finding hers with gentle passion that gradually intensified, healing the day's trauma with physical connection that transcended mere desire. Their lovemaking that night carried new depth, tender yet fierce, each touch a promise, each kiss a vow, that whatever came next, they would face it together. Morning found them entwined, sunlight revealing the peaceful certainty on Juniper's sleeping face. Luke watched her for several moments, memorizing the subtle changes that had transformed her since that first night at the restaurant. How fear had given way to confidence, isolation to connection, resignation to purpose. When she finally stirred, her first words surprised him. I want to design our new home together, she said, eyes still closed, a place that's truly ours from the foundation up. Luke's heart expanded with emotion too complex for simple naming. I'd like that, he replied softly. Very much. As they dressed to face the damage in daylight, Juniper's phone chimed with unexpected news. The gallery had sold every piece from her exhibition, with collectors requesting commissions for more. Simultaneously, Luke received word from Harold Kingsley that despite the loss of original drawings, the harbour project would proceed, with increased funding and expanded scope. The court-mandated therapy letter from Diana arrived that same day. Not quite an apology, but acknowledgement of actions taken during emotional distress. Luke placed it in his desk without mentioning it to Juniper. Some chapters needed closing, not sharing. Sometimes, Luke observed as they stood hand in hand before the damaged house they would soon rebuild together, what looks like ending is actually beginning. Juniper squeezed his hand. The engagement, rings catching morning light. And sometimes, she added softly, what people call a curse turns out to be the greatest blessing of all. Chapter 10. Eternal Flame. Moonlight bathes the terrace of their rented beachfront villa, casting silver patterns across Juniper's skin as she stands at the railing. 2 months have passed since the fire that destroyed Luke's workshop and damaged their coastal home. The insurance settlement came through last week, but more importantly, the blueprints for their new house, designed together during late-night sessions, now rest on the architect's desk downtown. Luke watches her from the doorway, mesmerized by her silhouette against the midnight ocean. Their temporary living arrangement hasn't dampened the intensity of what burns between them. If anything, sharing this smaller space has only deepened their connection, forcing an intimacy that neither would trade for all the square footage in the world. You're staring, she says without turning, a smile in her voice. I can't help it. He crosses to her, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. His lips find the sensitive spot where her neck meets her shoulder, and she leans back into him with a contented sigh. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Their days have been consumed with rebuilding. Luke recreating the harbor. Designs from memory. Juniper replacing her pottery destroyed in her studio. But their nights belong only to them. Time carved out where neither curse nor judgment can reach. I received another commission today, she tells him, covering his hands with hers. The gallery owner says there's a waiting list now. I'm not surprised. Luke murmurs against her skin. Your work speaks to people. It shows them beauty can rise from brokenness. Juniper turns in his arms, moonlight illuminating her face, so different from the guarded woman he first met at the Meridian. Fear has been replaced by certainty, isolation by connection, resignation by purpose. The transformation takes his breath away every time he witnesses it. I have something for you, she says, reaching into the pocket of her robe. She produces a small velvet pouch. It was supposed to wait until our wedding, but I think now is better. Luke's eyebrows rise in surprise as she presses the pouch into his palm. Inside, he finds a simple platinum band, its surface etched with a continuous wave pattern. I designed it, she explains, a hint of nervousness in her voice. The endless wave represents how we found each other across turbulent seas, how we'll weather any storm together. Emotion tightens Luke's throat as he slides the ring onto his finger. It's perfect, he manages, voice rough with feeling, just like you. Not perfect, she corrects, tracing the curve of his jaw. Just perfectly matched to you. All my broken pieces fit with yours. His kiss starts gentle, but quickly ignites into something more demanding. Juniper responds with equal hunger, her body arching against his with practiced familiarity. yet somehow still carrying the electric discovery of their first encounter. Luke lifts her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carries her inside to their bedroom. In the silver-blue darkness, they rediscover each other with reverent urgency. Luke's hands and mouth map her body as if memorizing territory both familiar and newly fascinating. Juniper matches his passion, her touch holding none of the hesitation that once defined her, only confident desire and tenderness. "I never thought I could feel this," she whispers against his skin as they move together. "This certainty, this freedom." Luke's eyes hold hers as pleasure builds between them. "You deserve every moment of it," he tells her, his voice thick with emotion and desire. "Every moment of joy, every moment of peace." Their release comes like a wave crashing against the shore, powerful, inevitable, transformative. As they lie tangled in the aftermath, heartbeats gradually slowing, Juniper traces idle patterns on Luke's chest. "The doctor called today," she says quietly, a smile in her voice despite her attempt at casualness. Luke's body tenses slightly beneath her touch. They'd visited the specialist last week. After Juniper had shown symptoms they both initially attributed to stress from the fire and rebuilding. "And?" he asks, trying to keep his voice neutral, despite the hope rising in his chest. She raises herself on one elbow to look into his eyes, moonlight illuminating the joy she can no longer contain. "It seems those medical reports Diana circulated were as fictional as her version of your character." Luke stares at her, understanding dawning slowly. "You mean—" "I'm pregnant," she confirms, her smile breaking free. "Twins, actually. The doctor said it's rare, but not unheard of for a first pregnancy." His reaction comes not in words, but in movement, gathering her against him with such tender ferocity that she gasps, his lips finding hers in a kiss that conveys what language cannot. When they finally part, tears shine in both their eyes. "I thought," he begins, voice unsteady. "I know," she whispers, touching his face. "Another curse broken." Luke places his hand reverently over her still flat abdomen, wonder and awe replacing the familiar confidence in his expression. "Our children," he says softly, testing the words that once seemed impossible. "Our future," she agrees, covering his hand with hers. They make love again, more gently this time, but with no less passion, each touch carrying awareness of the new life growing between them. Physical proof of what they've both come to believe, that what others called cursed was actually blessed all along. Dawn finds them on the terrace once more, wrapped in a single sheet against the morning chill, watching as first light paints the horizon in shades of possibility, gold and rose, and endless blue. Luke holds Juniper against his chest, his grandmother's diamond and the new sapphire band catching early sunlight on her finger. "We should set a date," he murmurs against her hair. "For the wedding." Juniper turns in his arms, morning light, illuminating her smile, no longer guarded, no longer fearful, but radiant with certainty. "How about next month, before I start showing?" Luke's hands frame her face with infinite tenderness. "I want the world to see," he tells her, "to witness what we've built from ashes and judgment and broken pieces." Their kiss deepens in the strengthening sunlight, passion reigniting with familiar ease. As they move back toward the bedroom, the architect's drawings forgotten on the table beside them, Juniper feels the final remnants of her self-imposed prison crumbling away, replaced by the foundation of something infinitely stronger. "I love you," she whispers against his lips. Beyond reason, beyond fear, beyond any curse. Luke's response comes in both words and touch, his hands and mouth writing promises against her skin that transcend language. As they fall back into bed, sunlight and shadow playing across their entwined bodies, two souls who recognized each other across crowded darkness, surrender to the certainty that what they've found is the rarest treasure of all. A love powerful enough to heal every wound, transform every scar, and illuminate even the darkest night with its eternal flame.